Hey guys, welcome to the Dragon's Voice podcast. I don't know how many episodes we're in because I've been so busy this week. We've got a lot of guests coming up today, and especially now if I'm recording this on a Thursday, so the next day will be the Friday, and I'll be uploading the Ryan Green episode. That will be the 10th episode. And I'm not going to say this is episode so and such because I've lost count so many times, and I don't know who I'm recording or who I'm speaking to next. But anyway, I'm really honoured to have both these guys on the show. They've grown podcasts all around. It's becoming huge. I've not long ago just watched the Graham Kavanagh one, and it brings back so many memories for me, you know, being a former Cardiff City fan. And if you are a big fan of the Andy Campbell Show or the A.C.E Podcast Nation, then you'll know these two guys really well. It's Si and none other than a former Cardiff City striker, Andy Campbell. How are you doing, both? How's it going?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, very well. Thank you for having me and us. Really? Thank you, mate.
Yeah, I'm all right. Good to be here.
I know. Oh, my God, this is mad. Andy Campbell and Si on my podcast.
I feel the odd one out. I feel the odd one out with my accent.
Oh, don't worry about it, because do you know what? A lot of people have said to me, right, because the whole point of this podcast, I think I told you this, or I don't know if Leighton Maxwell, shout out to you, big guy, because you were the one who messaged Andy. But it's like the whole podcast, you know, was supposed to be about Welsh football, you know, and I think you're going to be like, oh, hang on a minute, you know, I'm from England, blah, blah, blah. But the whole point of it is that it's not because, you know, if you're born in Wales or play for Wales, that's another thing. But if you contributed to Welsh football, in any shape or form, so like the goal, as we will mention it, you know, winning Cardiff at the playoffs and that, you know, I've spoken to a few people about getting Lee Trundle on the show, so because he's contributed. If you've contributed to Welsh football or Welsh football club in any shape or form, you will be on there. So it doesn't matter.
Good.
So
sounds good.
And I think a lot of people who are very happy because with my Facebook page, Dragon's Voice Podcast, all my Cardiff City mates are going, Andy Campbell, yes, sorted, got something to look forward to. Yeah, I was like, oh, thanks, I got other few episodes. Cheers. That was a nuts one. But no, let's get down to it. So before I ask questions to you guys, I want to know about, you know, all the podcasts, because I've lost count how many podcasts you got. I know you got the Andy Campbell one, you got the A.C.E Podcast Nation. So how many shows have you got in total together, guys?
Si, go on.
So we do two together, which is we have the Andy Campbell Football Show on a Monday, 7:30, where we have a different guest each week. And then Friday, we have the Andy Campbell Championship Show, which behind me you'll see there. Yeah. And where we have 45 minutes of non-stop championship talk. And we'll have normally have like an interview or something cut in there from a current or ex-footballer. And then A.C.E Podcast Nation does about 1 billion other podcasts. We've got cricket, MMA, boxing, TV, films.
I heard a wrestling one as well.
Yeah, wrestling. What else is there? Too many. Oh, unscripted, uncensored, which is always fun because that's where all the questions come from the people rather than me. And my story, which is quite a fun one, which is quite new, that one, because basically I just take different people through their careers. So we've had like Lofty from EastEnders was on. I'm doing one with Adam Hollyoak, former England cricketer, next week. We had Reece Weston. Who else was there? Someone else. Robbie Regan. A couple of other people. All sorts of people. Boxers, fighters, actors, bands. It's just grown a life of its own.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing, though. I mean, I'm happy for you guys, you know, do it because I love watching, you know, your podcast and everything, and especially the one with Graham Kavanagh. It seemed fun to doing it, but it's the best thing about podcasts, especially football ones, is it brings back a lot of nostalgia, you know, a lot of good memories, good feelings, you know, and that's the main thing, you know, with the podcast. So let's just get down to it then. Let's just get down to the good football stuff. And here's the thing, right? It's with my podcast, you can say anything, you know, it doesn't matter if it's controversial or anything like that. I mean, I let all my guests just speak freely, you know, do whatever they want to do or say what they want to say, you know. But with Andy, you know, let's just get down to it before I mention the good stuff with the Mighty Bluebirds. Middlesbrough, that goal against Man United in the FA Cup.
Yeah, well, so listen, I lived every one of my friends' dreams and a lot of local people's dreams, playing for my local club and supporting them as a young boy to play for my local club and then be able to score goals and play with the people I did, and then to be able to score against Man United, you know, that luckily enough, you know what I mean, I scored 2 different goals against Man United in 2 different games, and listen, precious memories what no one can ever take away, and you know what I mean, Mark Bosnich was one of them, Fabian Barthez was the other, and just amazing times in my life, and it just gives me an opportunity to one day look. I don't even think I've done it yet, but one day maybe to look back with my children and just reminisce and just look back with fond memories about what I had achieved, you know.
Yeah, it'd be funny as well because, you know, you got like a picture. If you ever had a picture on your wall scoring a goal against Man United, all you have to do is say, "Oh, what's your proudest achievement?" And all you have to do is just look back and say, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, and I think that's a good thing about you know, YouTube and all the platforms that show all goals. You know, I follow a lot of things on social media about like old Cardiff City highlights and old Middlesbrough highlights and all the teams, Halifax Town and all the other teams that I played for, because it's, you know, they tag me into things and games I played in, just because it's nice to reminisce about those good times, because once it's gone, you know. And obviously, you know what I mean, all the footballers you've been on, you mentioned Ryan Green, you know what I mean, Ryan was a good player back in the day. Obviously came across him at Cardiff and Hereford, etc. Leighton Maxwell, you know what I mean, all these players that when football's gone, it's gone. And it's such a shame, because you never get those times back, and the times that you miss are the laughing and joking in the changing room. I wouldn't say it's the games per se that you miss, it's the team bonding and the laughing and joking and changing and what goes on behind closed doors. And it's just, you know what I mean, you're never ever going to get that back.
You wouldn't get away with most of it now either, and
I wouldn't get away with anything, mate. Listen, you wouldn't get away with anything with social media and camera phones. So I'm quite lucky and fortunate that I got away with the stuff I got away with, because there's quite a few things that I didn't get away with. So imagine if they had certain things that they have now, you know. So
oh man, you know, what about you, Syke? You know, because you're the you know, you're a Cardiff City fan, aren't you? Or
I am, yeah.
And
my sins.
My sins. There's no such thing as sins, you know. I mean, I've had sins of being a Cardiff fan, and I'll tell you one thing before I ask you about your good times of being a Cardiff City fan. It's like me. I think people already know now from me mentioning it a few times in the past. I'm a Barry Town supporter, but before I was a Cardiff City fan, and I enjoyed the electric carnival atmosphere at Ninian Park. I watched you, Andy, playing. You know, there was a few times where my dad and my godfather would take me to the games. But it was only until around Cardiff City Stadium era where Vincent Tannier, when he came involved, and then the whole controversial changing the colours and everything like that, I was a bit I was a bit hesitant, but I thought just take it on the chin, keep going. You know, there's only goodness coming out of them. Cardiff got to the Premier League, but it was only during that Premier League season when everything started to be what it's not be, and in the end, it was just. I don't want to talk negative about Cardiff a lot, because I do. It's still in me, you know. The Cardiff is still in me, but there was problems where I had fallouts with fans, you know, near violence. I mean, and I was 16 at the time, and but then there was the bad performances and the politics. But at the time, you know, coming around into the early 2010s, Barry Town was coming into it, even though they were at the point of death's door. But then I started to move on the path of Barry Town and supporting them. But even though I stopped supporting Cardiff, I still have the memories in me of the good times where Ninian Park, you know, the famous players such as yourself, Andy, again, Robert Earnshaw, Danny Gabbidon, Andy Legg, Michael Chopper, Jay Bothroyd, Gavin Ray, all them players. And I'm thinking, I've got these memories just to sit down and just go back and, you know, relive in my thoughts. What about for you, Si? I mean, a lot of memories for you.
So, first of all those names you just mentioned, apart from Jay Bothroyd, we've had on the podcast or the channel in some form. Just a little plug. And the other thing I'd say is funny enough, I got a relatively similar story to that, in that I grew up a Cardiff fan, went with my old man, went with my friends, went with my mates when I was older. And then when we moved to the Cardiff City Stadium, I still went, but didn't enjoy it as much. It just wasn't the same. But I still went. It was, you know, it was still what it was. I still enjoyed the day out and the Saturday out and all the things which come with it. But when the rebrand came, I wasn't happy. The Premier League season, I went to, I think, 3 or 4 games. I pretty much decided I wasn't going to go anymore. I went to the Manchester United home game because My father died when I was 16, but we used to watch Man United together a lot on the TV and that, because he was a fan. So I said, right, I'm going to go to that game just out of principle that we're finally in the Premier League, so I should go to that one. I went, I enjoyed it for it was a game of football. And I didn't go back after that until I went this last February for the first time since then. And I took my son for his birthday because he wanted to go. And I haven't really been back since, other than that. For a while, it was like a kind of like a principle thing. I didn't want to go back, and I said I wouldn't go back until Vincent Tan left. I've kind of got over that now, whereby it's not necessarily like a anti-Vincent Tan thing, because he did, he turned it around, he did the right things, but my habits have changed. I got 3 kids, 2 teenagers. I've got so used to not going to watch the live football on a Saturday and doing other stuff that it's kind of changed. But I think I probably will go next year once the COVID-19 stuff is all done and dusted, because all my kids want to go. So.
Yeah. It's eating me a hole. It is this pandemic, this COVID-19 stuff, because with now, it's like my team have qualified for Europe, and there's a possibility of not going, and I'm there going, I want to go. It's European football at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what round, but it's for everyone who wants to go and watch football. And to see it on live television, it's not the same of experiencing the carnival atmosphere, but especially at I keep going back on Ninian Park because it was what a ground it was. So tight, so close together. But for you, Andy, you played on Ninian Park field, the pitch of Ninian Park. What was that like for you to be going on the pitch and experiencing the atmosphere and playing for Cardiff City?
I don't think you can replicate those kind of surroundings, that the fans right on top of you. You can feel the atmosphere, It's more or less like touching distance. The ball goes out of play, You're right on top of the supporters are right on top of you. And the good old days, I find, that I played in quite a lot of new stadiums, and they're just not. They haven't got the same feel, that you've got fans who like to congregate together when they're standing, and that can't happen because seats and just the atmosphere is never the same. But for football clubs to evolve and get bigger, to business now, and for them to push forward, would Cardiff City got in the Premier League at Ninian Park? I'd probably say no, because they had to make that step up and that to go at that next level in order for the business to rebrand and go to another level. Yes, it was handled really, really badly, but I think the club knows that. From top to bottom, that changing colours, seat colours and stuff, and just having the brand was just wrong, and it put a lot of people off. But that the football club, luckily enough, has got themselves in a situation where they're ready to strike again, and if they can get bums back on seats, because the last time they got promoted, against Reading last game of the season, I was there, and the atmosphere, I've never ever sampled an atmosphere like it in a stadium like it. All-seater stadium. Me, Kev McNaughton, and Stephen McPhail walked round, and I've never felt anything like it. It was ridiculous. It was hairs on your neck standing up. It was just, I was spine tingling. It was just enormous, and you just felt as though that the club is ready to go at that other level. It's a big city. It's a huge football club, but taking a step back now. They just need to push on again, and if they can do that this year, great. If not, take stock and go again, because the world of Wales, especially being in the city, needs Premier League football and could be massive. When people bang on about the Celtic and Rangers drum about getting the old firm into the Premier League, well, it's just no different to Cardiff and Swansea. That if they're both allowed, then same thing applies, because cities deserve big football clubs, and Cardiff's no different.
Cardiff and Swansea had to make their way up the leagues to get there.
I totally agree. Listen, I'm not a big advocate of this. You know me, that I'm not. I won't sit on the fence. I'll tell people how it is. And for me, if they want to earn the right to get where they want to be, then to go from bottom top. If that's it. But will players follow suit? Players won't do that, because money won't be there. The fans will be there because the fans love football clubs, and that's just the way it is. But it's they're looking for a different avenue of football. But going back to Cardiff and Ninian Park played such a huge part in my life. That people might say, "Oh, Ninian Park, what are you going there for?" It's not a nice stadium to go to. It reminded me of Ayresome Park back at Middlesbrough. Same kind of atmosphere, same kind of attendances. Probably not as hostile. The Cardiff City fans made it a hostile atmosphere, but good hostile for us. but obviously negative for the away teams. And yeah, not many teams came to us and got a positive response and got positive results because of the way that the fans made it happen. So it was really good. Really enjoyed my time there.
With you're talking about hostile atmosphere with Ninian Park, and I mean I've experienced it. The roar. That's like you're going into the Lions' Den. In grounds like that, and I remember I never went to this game though. My dad did, and I mentioned this one before. My dad had to clarify me. He was like, "Reece, I was not in the Bob Bank. I was in the Granger when this game happened, but it was in the Leeds United game. I know you didn't. I know you went there. I think you came sort of after.
I was a week. I joined a week after, but I watched it because my move was happening. Yeah. In and around that time, so obviously I was a keen supporter. Obviously, I knew certain players at the club already. I knew some of the staff, so you know what I mean. So I was ready to go, but obviously I wanted to make sure. And I watched the game with a keen interest.
And for you, Si, did you turn up to that game as well, the Cardiff and Leeds game, the infamous one?
I can't really talk about that day, to be honest, but it was a fun day and it was really good. It was, look, the atmosphere that day was like nothing that I would imagine. Even on the TV, I think people don't understand quite what it was like. And like when you've got Rio Ferdinand saying what he did afterwards about when the media was asking him, are you worried about playing in Turkey against Galatasaray and stuff like this? And he's like, I played at Ninian Park, so I'm not really worried. That kind of tells you everything which you need to know about the hostility that day. It was interesting, to say the least.
But I think though, as players though, guys, that I think you need, as players, you need to know that you've got your fans backing. That there's not many grounds that in teams that I played against where you get that kind of hostility. I've said it on the show many times about Millwall fans. Millwall are exactly the same. That Millwall, every time you go to the Den, the old Den or the new Den, you know about it, and you've come away from there in a right game. You know what I mean? That's mentally and physically. It's tiring. It's exhausting, and the fans play the part, and I think that's where football now at the minute is. Teams are getting found out because players respond to supporters and supporters respond to players, and the whole environment is just not the same at the minute. And those kind of teams are struggling a little bit. I don't think Cardiff respond to the hostile atmosphere anymore. They've gone down a different way of playing over the last couple of years since the new stadium. Whereas Millwall, for example, respond to their kind of players and fans and stuff. So, it's same as Sheffield United. I'll give them as an example that they've really struggled since lockdown and since football started again, because they rely on the cop at Bramall Lane and the ball getting sucked in, like Chris Wilder speaks about. And it's such a shame that can't happen for certain clubs, because it's affecting people's seasons, livelihoods, and football's not the same without fans.
Yeah. The only time Cardiff, sorry, mate, I was just going to say, the only time I think Cardiff have got close to recreating that atmosphere is under Malky Mackay. Now, whatever you think about the way he left, the time under Mackay was when the fans, I think, have been the most united, even though it was the rebrand, was that point. The players' relationship with the fans was very good at the time, and the fans loved Malky Mackay as well. And I think that's where the disconnect happened for a lot of fans, is that the majority of fans were behind Malky Mackay, and then all of a sudden you've got all this other stuff which affects everything. Like you said, Reece, caused divides between friends, caused issues between fans, caused issues between the club and fans, and that's the most frustrating thing about it.
With going on the Malky Mackay situation as well, I remember, you have to look at Malky Mackay's record with Cardiff City to show that how much he brought to the club, how much he gave fans hope and everything. Because in his first season, right, everyone just thought he was just going to bring some stability to the team, and just say, right, let's just put ourselves in a position where we got the confidence to go next season to the Premier League or something like that, which did happen. But in his first season, he got to the Carling Cup final against Liverpool, and I went to that game. And he brought this whole he brought something back to Cardiff, the fans hoping, the roar, the atmosphere. And, in his first season, gets to Carling Cup final, lost to Liverpool. We should have won that night. I'm sorry, we should have won that night on penalties. And I blame Anthony Gerrard, so I don't care if I blame him.
I blame Kenny Miller for missing that goal in the last 2 minutes.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you this now. We were when we were in the stands. It was me, my dad, my auntie, her missus at the time, and it was my dad's mate, Howie, and we were there. And we thought, well, Kenny Miller's good at penalties. Oh, he'll be all right. Misses it, and I thought, oh no. But then Steven Gerrard, of all people, misses a penalty, and I think Charlie Adam just, I think the ball is still in the galaxy somewhere, with Charlie Adam's penalty. But then Rudy Gesti comes up, and I'm thinking, right, he cannot miss this. This is a striker who can score goals. He's perfectly capable, and he missed it. And I'm thinking, oh, this is not going to go our way. Here we go. But as soon as Anthony Gerrard went up to take the penalty, my dad to me, Howie, said to me, if he misses, something's not right. I went, well, no, give the benefit of the doubt. I went, no, something's not right if he misses it, and he missed it. And then ever since then, I don't know if you noticed this, Si, but there was a lot of Cardiff City fans just grown to strongly dislike Anthony Gerrard because he missed the penalty, because of his last name, and that's talking something. And then going back on the Malcolm Mackay situation, he gets Cardiff to the Premier League next season. And then, and it all just comes crashing down afterwards in the Premier League. But it's like you said, it brings the whole atmosphere in, and vice versa. Now, going on to you, Andy, it's when you first signed for Cardiff City under Lenny Lawrence, you had, it was around about the time, you had players such as Danny Gabbidon, Andy Legg, Ernie, Graham Kavanagh, who you had on the other day, all those players. What was the dressing room like for you to be playing with these either future or current Welsh international players, or really good, high-rated players?
I think first and foremost, when I signed, I had a bit of an idea. Obviously, I knew Lenny from Middlesbrough days, and I knew a couple of other players. Paul Brayson was there from the northeast. Cav was there, and I knew certain others. And as I sat there in the changing room, I looked around and thought, this isn't a League One dressing room. This is a Championship dressing room. You know what I mean? But obviously, there's a job to do to get out of it, and you know what I mean. But you're not guaranteed it by just turning up on a Saturday. You've got to earn the right. And I thoroughly believed and bought into what Sam Aman, what Lenny Lawrence wanted me to do that season is get them out of the league, which obviously we tried and obviously failed in the end against Stoke City in the playoffs, which was heartbreaking. But it made the players stronger together. It made us more hungry to make sure that we weren't put in that position again. That, you know what I mean, there isn't a time what goes by every time I think about playoffs, especially semi-finals, that I don't think about that Stoke City night. And you know what I mean, the second leg about I think it was James O'Connor who scored the free kick. I scored an extra time. And listen, I've met James because I know he's really good friends with Graham Kavanagh. I met him in Ireland a couple of times on socialising and things, and you always look at people differently after with certain memories, and you know what I mean. That I really like the fella, but part of me just really dislikes him for what he did, because it was a hurt. Because I remember straight after the game, Lenny told us to go home, and I thought he meant just around the corner in Radda. But what he meant to me was just go back to Middlesbrough for a couple of days and come back and we'll have a meeting. So I drove straight after the game, which I think the game finished close to 11 o'clock. By the time I'd had a shower and got all my stuff, I was in the car. I got straight in the car, drove all the way down to Middlesbrough. And I think by the time I got to Middlesbrough, the game was probably still quite rife in my head, and it was really upsetting. And you know what I mean, it probably took me a couple of days to get over it. And then the drive back to Cardiff for a meeting with the players and the manager before we planned on next season. And it was just made me more hungry for success. And obviously the next season happened, which, you know what I mean, if there's a way to go up, if there's a way that you want to go up, it's playoffs. But if there's a way that you don't want to go up and get beat, it's playoffs again. So, you know what I mean, it's a lottery, and people say that, like you would go up as champions because then you don't have to go through it. But, you know what I mean, if you can guarantee to win at the end of it, it's the best feeling in the world. But, you know what I mean, I still haunted a little bit by playoff semi-finals.
With it's like with the playoffs. Some of the playoff, semi-finals or finals I've been to watch with Cardiff. There was there was the Leicester City. That was the best one. I ran on that pitch that day, and there was that infamous song about Jan Kermorgant I don't know have you heard of that song? I think Sinos what I'm talking about. Have you heard it, Andy?
I think I've seen it. Yeah, I think I've seen a few clips and videos.
So. I remember. I don't know what game it was, but we went for an away trip, and it was me, Howie, my dad, and another mate of mine was Jimbo, and my dad's mate said, "I've got this song, and it's brilliant. You got to listen to it." I went, "Oh, what is it?" He went, "Oh, you just got to listen to it," and it was just this. Excuse my horrible singing. He goes, "Come again, why oh why," and it just goes into this big sadness and ironic song about Jan Kimmergun missing a penalty, trying to chip a penalty against him.
Yeah, but when you're in a situation like that, we spoke about on the show about the playoff final, obviously 2000. When we beat QPR, that all what was going through my head for 6-7 minutes in the game was, where am I going to put the penalty? What am I going to do? And the last thing on my mind in a pressure situation like that is to try and chip a penalty. It's just, listen, you know what I mean? These world-class players who've done it in pressure situations, that's one thing, but missing it, he must have been. I'd love to have been a fly in the wall in the Leicester City changing room to see what really did get said, because he didn't do himself any favours. They're on about Anthony Gerrard being a hated man by supporters, but you know what I mean? That must have been 10 times worse for him. And
I remember as well, I don't know what playoffs was it? Was it West Ham or Reading? But it was just one of the worst playoff semi-finals I've seen. I think it was against Reading. I'm sure it was against Reading, but Stephen Bywater had a woeful game. And I could not understand at all. I mean, if he's watching it, no disrespect, but this is how a lot of people felt at the time, that, when he put on just one of the worst performances ever. And it was around about that moment where we had to make emergency loan signings because Marshall, Tom Heaton were both injured. And even Jordan Santiago, which a lot of people do not know, a lot of fans don't know, but he was our third goalkeeper, third choice. And he was out because he had a broken finger of all the times to have that. And Cardiff brought in Stephen Bywater and Jason Brown, and Jason Brown was an experience. He was a Welsh international player, and a lot of people expected Brown to be the first choice keeper to come in because of his experience on international levels, but they chose Stephen Bywater, and he just gives away one of the worst performances in a Cardiff City game. But for you, when on that season leading up to the playoffs, with all the players and everything, what was the initial target? Was it, let's get to the playoffs, or let's try and win the league? What was the initial plan?
The initial plan at the start of the season was promotion. Obviously, everyone wants to get promotion, but everyone wants to be champions. And we believe that, looking what had come down, looking what was still in, looking what had come up, that we believed that we would go straight up. From automatic promotion, but towards the end of the season, we didn't have a great time. We were underperforming. We'd lost a lot of games. We'd chipped into quite a lot of goals. Goals were drying up a little bit, and then obviously towards the back end of the season, I think it was just a case of, right, let's get in the playoffs. You know what I mean? We'll restock. You know what I mean? If anything more happens, then fabulous. But let's get in the playoffs, and then we'd back ourselves and back our chances. We've had the experiences of last year. And then we go again, that. And when we did get in the playoffs, I remember we socialised quite a lot, together, and bonded in the right way, not obviously drinking, but just so we had an understanding of what happened last year, so new players had an understanding of how we felt last year and where we wanted to go and what we wanted to do. And, I'd say the performances running up to the semi-final against Bristol City were shocking, weren't good enough, but obviously, we played 3 games, 2 against Bristol City, 1 against Queen's Park Rangers, plus extra time against QPR. And we didn't let a goal in, So the bad form that we were running into, beat Bristol City at home in the semi-final at home at Ninian with Thorny's goal 1-0, drew at Ashton Gate 0-0, and then obviously beat QPR in the final. So we went into the game, especially the final, with a bit of confidence that we were keeping clean sheets, and off the back of a 4-0 win at Loftus Road as well. So we believed that we were unstoppable, and it was just the belief from the captain, belief from the manager, the belief from Sam that this was our year. And with it being at the Millennium Stadium, it was just written in the stars that it was that season as well that all three sides who went up that day or that weekend, because we played on the Sunday, there was a Saturday game, and then Wolves played after us. They all stayed at the Vale Hotel. So we all stayed in the same hotel. We all got promoted. We all got changed in the same dressing room. We all got promoted. So it's little things like that on the Sunday it was. I can't remember who got promoted the day before, but I can't remember. But that Lenny came in and said they got promoted because we've seen them come back and celebrating. They got changed in this changing room. So already psychologically, you're thinking, right, we've won, and the build up to the game was magical. That fans clapping us in, and I don't really think we felt that much pressure. We just went there to do a job. It was a shocking game. I'll be honest. It was, it wasn't a great game for football. It was rubbish from them, rubbish from us, but it was probably a nervous game, and I think supporters felt the same way. And the way it ended for me personally was great, but for the club, and one thing I will say that people 17 years ago, 17 years is absolutely flew by, but people say that they don't forget, and you just think that's just a figure of speech that God will forget. Someone else will go and do something, which they have done, but no one's ever forgot. It's probably stronger felt of now, 17 years down the line, than it was 2 days after when it happened. So, I'm never going to be able to forget it because it happened to me personally, but I'm never going to be able to forget it because people never let me forget it, and that's probably the nicest thing. And every time I come back to Cardiff, I'm always well thought of, and I only try my best with everything I do, but I always try my best at Cardiff, and I didn't leave the way I wanted to leave at Cardiff, but for that time, personally, my private life with having my daughter was born in Cardiff, so I've got it plays a big part in my life for forever, really.
I'm going to ask both of you guys this question because it's both leading up to it. Before I do, I think in the Cardiff City Stadium, because there's one, I think it's in the grandstand or something like that. When you go into the turnstiles, you got all these artistic drawings of players going down. You got like Joe Ledley, Fred Keno, and I think Scott Young, because he scored the winning goal against Leeds United, and I think you're on there as well, Andy. So
I get it sent every home game. Every home game there can be somebody will send me a screenshot of them having a photo taken with a pint of lager, having a drink before the game, and it's nice because it's history, and it's history of the club. And when people say that the club wouldn't be where they are without that goal, I agree. But there could have been anyone who scored that goal, but there was probably 22 other players that season who contributed to that promotion. The Gareth Wally who set the goal up, who's unsung hero, the Willie Bolans, the Andy Leggs, the Leo Fortune West, Gavin Gordons, those players who played a massive part who don't get the recognition that they should for that season, because some of those players weren't around any time after that, because obviously we went to another level, they got sold on, and but we're all in touch, and it played a big part of our careers, lives, memories. So it's always nice to be remembered for photos like that.
What about you, Si, for that playoff final against QPR? That must have been something as well.
So I got told off by my wife after Monday's show because when I was closing the show out, I described it as I think I said something like the man who gave me the best night of my life.
Yeah, you did.
And the skipper. And
you did.
I got told off for that just after then. But the thing is, for me, that day, I remember the heartbreak of the year before, and we didn't have a great record in the playoff semi-finals. So I think not just that, we'd missed out on the playoffs, I think, by a point or goal difference a few years before as well. So then to get to the playoff finals finally, and it being Cardiff, you felt like it was written in the stars. But equally, everyone is of the mindset, it's Cardiff, so we're going to lose, or something's going to go wrong. Someone's going to get sent off in the 5th minute, and we'll have to play with 10 men for the whole game. But I ended up switching seats just before kickoff and stuff like that. But it was an awesome day, and I was right behind where Andy scored. I was on the halfway line, so I was right behind him with my mate, and yeah, what a day. We were outside I was outside the City Arms. I think my friends left at about 3:00 in the morning, but I was still there at sort of 4, half 4 maybe. Just singing,
I think the day side, doesn't it?
The same Peter Thorne song over and over again.
The day takes over more than the game. The game becomes secondary because you remember it for different reasons. You know what I mean? That for me, the build up to the game was different because it felt different. It had to be different. Before the game was different. It felt different. You know what I mean? And then the game's sometimes secondary. You know what I mean? The goal obviously is in the memory, but after, just all the players sitting in the chair. I remember it very, very clearly, sitting in the changing room, and I remember the celebrations on the pitch were amazing. But in the changing room, you expect absolute madness and crazy. It wasn't like that at all. It was quite subdued, and I think we left everything on the pitch, everything outside, and I think we then realised that what was happening outside. That, you know what I mean, we were getting messages about the scenes outside. You know, we had family and friends in a local restaurant over the road from the Millennium Stadium, which we were going to go meet. It took us hours to get there, and that was just the way it was. And for the rest of that night, which was a long night, by the way, it is what it is, and it was what it was. It was amazing, but it lives in the memory. You know what I mean? That you'd bump into a player 3 hours later who played in the game, and it was just you just couldn't stop by smiling, celebrating with people, and it was just a surreal moment, which doesn't come around very often. You know what I mean? I say this on the show that you got to cherish them, because they don't happen as often as you'd like, and if they do happen at all, then you've got to make sure you keep that kind of memory and enjoy every minute and look back with fond memories, because, you know what I mean, like Si said there, the heartbreak of the year before, and, you know what I mean, yes, it takes out a little bit, but, you know what I mean, and I think that was one of the things what was said in the changing room after that. Enjoy this, because remember what happened last year, and straight away, you know what I mean, you realise that, you know what, you know, we worked for 12 months to get that out of the memory, and finally we've managed to do it, and hopefully now the club can go and kick on, because at the time it was still up in the air, you know, we're still at Ninian Park. Yes, there was an idea that the club was going to get taken over, the club was going to go to a new stadium, all these plans are in place, but, you know what I mean, that the club had to go and then push on to another level, and obviously Lenny didn't stick around too long after, with a few bad results, and new managers came and gone, and
Sam was pushing that idea though of moving stadium and changing name or new owners investing billions. That was going around from about a week after he came into the club. He always was, every couple of months you'd see, like in the Western Mail and the Echo, Cardiff on the brink of a takeover, or Cardiff moving stadium to this, that and the other. It was constant. So, you know, you knew it was going to happen eventually.
Yeah. But I think as a player though, side though, we all knew, and fans all knew, that Sam was only good at what he did, and he was excellent at it, by the way. But, you know what I mean, to invest that kind of money to get them to another level, it's serious money, isn't it? It's serious money to build the stadium. It's serious money to then invest in the pitch. You know what I mean? Because that club invested on the pitch massive. You know what I mean? For transfer fees and wages, and the kind of players what you mentioned at the start, both of you. You know, that they were magical footballers and players which hopefully come through the door again, and we go to another level and get back to the Premier League with this kind of players and more players, you know. So, yeah, really, really enjoyable times at the club.
Reece, I was going to say, mate, sorry. I was just going to say, you said about the changing rooms, or when you said about the changing rooms in the Millennium Stadium, that wasn't just that weekend. That went on for the whole time that you know, like the FA Cups and the Carling Cups with the Millennium Stadium while Wembley was being built. That one changing room, as if you look at the stats, I think it's ridiculously high that whoever's in the one changing room would often be the winner. And I think for a couple of years it was like unbeaten. So
yeah, well, I agree, because I think since that weekend, obviously, then I was obviously aware of it. You know what I mean? Because I think the named, aren't they? You know what I mean? And you always find out where teams are staying, and you know what I mean. I'd always say to my mates, you know what I mean. So on playoff final day or cup final day, when especially when Michael Owen scored the goal, I was, what changing room are they in? What hotel have they stayed at? You know what I mean? So if you're gonna have a bet on the game, bet on them. It's just stupid stuff, mental stuff, but it's something which, you know what I mean, if players are aware of, you know what I mean, sometimes it can have a negative effect on mindset and going into a game with a winning mentality or a already lost mentality.
With Sam Hammam, let's go back on him for a moment then, because there's a lot of pros and cons you can say about the man, you know. But for you, Andy, you know, you must have had a few moments where you've spoken to him, or he's had meetings. I mean, I'm not a footballer, so I don't know the proper ins and outs. But what was your experience like speaking or socialising with Sam Hammam, or Big Sam, as some people called him?
When I first sat down with him, I had a proper conversation. I was nearly said grown-up conversation then, but it wasn't really a grown-up conversation. Sam's not very grown-up at times. But
I was going to say,
listen, it was a business conversation. Let's say it was a football conversation, and he was telling me his dreams and aspirations for the football club, and I was sat there, and I'll be honest, I was sat there thinking, it's not realistic. You know what I mean? To say where we are now, to achieve the Premier League is a long shot. You know, that I could turn on and say, I want to go and play for England. You know what I mean? And it's sometimes it's just not realistic. You know what I mean? You've got to have a smart target and a realistic target at the end of it. And you know, he was good to his word. You know that he put things in place. He put his money where his mouth was. He brought in these players. He brought himself in. He was bringing other big name players in, and pushing the club to another level. And without Sam, and I say without the players, without Sam Haman, that football club will not be anywhere where it is now. And you know what I mean? He should take a lot of plaudits for what he's done. Yes, it hasn't probably ended the way that he wanted and other people wanted. You know what I mean? And
do you think Mehmet feels that way? And
well, exactly. You know what I mean? But then Mehmet owns a football club, or he's chairman of a football club, which has got a history. You know what I mean? It's got a history, good or bad, and he's part of that history, and he's part of a history which has got them to where they are now, with the stability of what they've got now. And for me, people can say as players, but Sam played a huge part in that. You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna, you know what I mean? He did have his bad points, of course he did. You know, but and did have his wacky ways of doing things, and his stories and his high aspirations. But listen, if he'd have turned around to me and said, I want to be in the Championship in 5 years' time, I wouldn't have signed. It's simple as that. You know, that part of me thought it was unrealistic, but part of me thought, imagine if they did get in the Premier League and back to back, my contract will be, I'll be a Premier League player in 3 years, back to where I've just left. So, you know, I wanted to get back there. I just left Middlesbrough in the Premier League, but I wanted to play games, and you know what I mean. So, but at the same time, I was realistic. So, but I didn't want to miss part of the journey, because people have said that they bought into it. So you had to buy into it. It was a decision that I made, and I was so pleased that I did, because you know, I mean, the football club has evolved so much from when I signed in 2001. You know, we look where they are now. So you know, what I mean, Sam played a big part in me joining, and I'm pleased I did.
It was correct me if I'm wrong here, both of you anyway, but it was just when I was looking into Sam Hammam, you know, just in general, because I just love looking at football trivias or history stuff. You know, that's just my kind of hobby. And I was looking to Sam Hammam, you know, and there was like thoughts and process, you know, of rebranding the club, you know, to be called Cardiff Celts, and changing the there was like a change for the kits from blue and white to what was it, green and black and red or something like that. It was and I'm thinking, whoa, I thought Sam Hammam had it going for himself, you know. So, but that was mad. I bet there was like a big uproar with that kind of idea, you know, sort of to rebrand the club and call themselves the Cardiff Celts, because that wouldn't go down well. It's like, welcome to the team, Cardiff Celts. It's like, oh, okay, a bit of a.
I think sometimes, I think, you know what I mean. I think we were quite lucky that we had obviously Cavu who managed the changing room really well. He managed the club really well at the time. You know, that when these kind of things were mentioned and in the press, or you know what I mean, and Cav doing press conferences on a weekend, you know what I mean, being captain, that he handled himself really well with class, and you know what I mean, answered these questions really well, and told the chairman that these things aren't the right things to do. You know, that we've got the backing of the club, we've got the backing of the fans. You know what I mean, and the players are all pushed in the same direction. We can't afford anything to stop this, because any inkling that we haven't got the backing by everybody, that's when clubs don't work. And you know what I mean, that we've all got to be pushed in the same direction. And yes, there's been times in the past, not so long ago, that the club always wasn't pushing in the same direction. But I believe now they are, and you know what I mean, like now they can hopefully finally be back to probably the times that we had back in 2003, 2004, that the club's together on and off the pitch, fans are together on and off the pitch, and they're just waiting for that little bit of success again. And if that can happen this year and go through in the playoff final, and listen, if there's an opportunity this year and someone scores in the 114th minute and my goal is eradicated and someone else takes over, if that means Cardiff City get in the Premier League, I'd be over the moon, because they need to get in the Premier League sooner rather than later, because we talk about it on our shows that the business is getting bigger, football as a brand's getting bigger, and the Championship's getting ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And you know what I mean, next year is going to be no different. That potentially it's going to have Norwich, Villa, and Bournemouth in it, which is just going to be silly to even think about. So the league's going to be even harder to get out of.
COVID's made it even more important that they go up, in my opinion, because they're losing so much money per month. What did he say on the show? 3 million per month.
3 million
they're losing through during the lockdown period. They can't. No club outside of your Manchester Uniteds and your Man Cities and people like that can sustain that as a business. So I think, because like you mentioned, those clubs which are coming down, I think it's vital that Cardiff go up this year, or they may find themselves at the other end of the table next year because they might have to sell to just balance the books in the summer.
But on that point, though, if that does happen, though, and they don't go up this year, I do hope that fans give players, managers, chairmen, owners a little bit of time to be aware, because if players get sold and no one gets brought in, it's because of situation, not because of anything else, and you know what I mean, I'm realistic, you know what I mean. You see how the world's evolved and changed over the last 12 weeks is disastrous, so football's going to be no different.
With the especially with funny enough, I have one of my notes down here to say that it's very important to have some stability and everything, but when after the playoffs, Lenny stayed for I think a season or two, and then all of a sudden Dave Jones came in, and then all of a sudden with the plannings of what was going on, not handling well with the new stadiums, with what was going on and everything, and Peter Ridsdale came on board slightly after particular seasons, because I remember you left, Andy, I can't remember, it was like the 2006 or 7 season, was probably and then all of a sudden around December time, Sam Hammam left, and Peter Ridsdale came in. What was going on at that point? At that point in the club's running, and what was going on around that time when you were leaving? And then was there still ideas? Was there still rumors going on that Sam Hammam was leaving? What was going on at that time?
I think first and foremost, I speak about my goal being one of the highlights of my career, which it was, and I never ever want to change that. But it also had a negative impact on my Cardiff City career. So obviously Cardiff got promoted. They invested heavily on new players. Alan Lee came in, Richard Langley came in, just to name 2 for that season. And then obviously Lenny left because due to poor results, and a new manager came in, and Dave Jones came in. Me and Dave didn't see eye to eye. I've publicly stated very often, every week on the show, that he wasn't my kind of manager. I wasn't his kind of player, and it wasn't a place where I wanted to be anymore. I was settled there. I had a young family, very happy outside of football, very content with where my life was going, but I wanted to play. So selfishly, I had to get out, you know what I mean? So their club wanted me out, needed me out. I had to go out personally, professionally, and get out. And obviously Stevie Thompson was coming in. He was in the club, very, you know what I mean? But I don't think he was allowed to sign until I left, and dug me heels in a little bit, which didn't go down very well with certain people at the club. And but listen, I'm not there to be bullied. I'm not there to be pushed out. And I felt as though that was happening. So you know what I mean? I just wanted to go and play football and enjoy my life and enjoy my football. You know what I mean? I'm not one who can sit and not earn my money and enjoy what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I'd train on my own for a week, 2 weeks, 10 days, and it was heartbreaking. There was no enjoyment. I was turning into work, training, however you want to call it, and there was just nothing at the end of it. No games to look forward to, even reserve games. So I was getting myself in a rut, and then a chance to leave and go up to Scotland and go and play for Dunfermline came around, and I jumped at the chance to move away from the situation more than anything. Gutted to leave the club, the fans, where I was, because being a footballer, people don't realise, but when a move comes around, you know what I mean? I found out at 12 o'clock on a Thursday that Dunfermline were ready to take me. So I jumped in the car, packed a bag, left a young family at home, and drove across through 2 countries to get to where I wanted to be, and left them, and they joined me weeks or 2 later. So it's not a nice thing to have to do, and but you know what I mean, it leaves sometimes a bit of taste, and you know what I mean. Listen, I don't have a problem with the football club. You know what I mean. I just wanted to play, and I think it could have been handled better from both sides. I made some mistakes, but so did he in my eyes. So you know what I mean. I don't think that's ever been sorted out. But I think the press also have a part to play in things like that, because you know what I mean. I publicly came out on Twitter and said some things I probably shouldn't have, but it's not something that I didn't want people to know. It's something that I probably should have just said in a different format. probably to a paper or to a journalist, or on a live podcast, which then it's interpreted in the way that I wanted to come across, where people jumped on the back of a tweet and take it as people want and see it as a bitter, twisted. And that's not the way I come across, you know what I mean? I like to think that the way I handle myself on our show and on here, that, you know what I mean, listen, I don't hold grudges, you know what I mean? If Dave Jones would like to come on our show, I'd have him tomorrow.
Open invite.
I would be honest and tell him how I felt things were and happened and then just, I'm realistic, you know, that he didn't want me there and I didn't want to be there, but I ain't going to be pushed and bullied into leaving a football club when I didn't want to go at the time. But then after a few days, I realised that, yeah, he's won and I need to go, and I left, and my football career took a different path and a nice path, really, because I lived in Edinburgh. I played against some of the biggest clubs in Europe, Celtic and Rangers. I played in a cup final at Hampden Park, so I didn't do badly out of it the following year.
Not too bad, not too shabby, innit? With what about you, Syke? It's you know, being a Cardiff fan, you know, you hear Sam Hammam leaving and everything. Was it around then that it was a time of celebration, or it was a time of wondering, whoa, where was this club going now? And what was your thoughts and process going in with Sam Hammam leaving?
So for me, like, people are quick to jump on the Sam Hammam criticism bandwagon, and I get that completely. He's saddled the club with a lot of debt. He's chasing the club for money that they owe him in various ways. You can't get away from that. That's a problem. However, like Andy said, if it's not for Sam Hammam, very unlikely that Cardiff City get the calibre of players that we got in the Championship and League One, by the way. You know, we wouldn't have got those players because Sam Hammam sold the dream to those players, and I'm sure Andy would tell you, and, you know, all the other guys. Particularly when we were still in League One, they got sold the dream of where he wanted to take the club. So when he left, I was sad because I appreciated what he had done. However, you can't get away from the negative side of it. I am not a massive fan of Peter Ridsdale for various reasons. I think if you take kind of the personal debt out of it between the club and Sam Hammam, I think Peter Ridsdale did far more damage long term than what Sam Hammam did. However, I'm sure people would say that without Peter Ridsdale, the stadium move doesn't happen, because I think he kind of got it over the lines where Sam Hammam was maybe struggling to get that big deal to move this, you know, to move stadiums over the line. You know, it is what it is. You know, they're both part of Cardiff City history, whether you like it or not. That's just the way it is. I
agree, side there though. It's transition, isn't it? You know what I mean? That look at the mess that Arsenal have got themselves into for moving from Highbury to the Emirates. You know what I mean? That Cardiff are no different. You know what I mean? There have to be a transition. You know, I remember being at Cardiff, and obviously wages were late to begin with, and then obviously wages then didn't turn up. I ended up having Ian Lanning, the kit man, living with me for 6 months, because luckily enough for a footballer, you're earning good money, so you've been able to put money away. But people who live from week to week and month to month, like Ian at the time was doing as a young boy, and you know, he living with me and taking him to training, he couldn't afford to put petrol in, and I just felt as though, you know what I mean, we took people under our wing. You know what I mean, receptionists not getting paid. It's one thing, footballers. You know what I mean, it's another thing. Other people who work within the industry, and it was such a difficult time, and having the PFA come in and having meetings and wondering if we were training, wondering if games were going to go ahead, and it was such an uncertain time. And obviously then players were coming and going and leaving, and then as a player you think, oh, should I go? Is it right time to go? You know what I mean? There was uncertainties with managers, chairmen, football clubs. You know what I mean, listening to, are we going to go into administration? You know, that look at football clubs now. You know, we were having the Wigan yesterday, and it's such an uncertain time for anyone involved in a club, and players are no different. That you then looked at as an investment and a piece of meat that you're going to get sold on, and you're not in control anymore. And sometimes you just want to be able to make those kind of decisions yourself. And you know what I mean? That I see it as I just said it there. I said it earlier. It's part of a history. You know what I mean? Corky, for me, started it with Sam Haman. Lenny Lawrence took over with Sam Haman. Dave Jones and Peter Ridsdale carried it on, put it to another level. Malky then came in, new owners, changed brand, and look where they are today. And all of those pieces are just a part of the jigsaw. And without any of those pieces, the whole thing wouldn't be where it is now. And, you know what I mean? Fans have played a huge part, huge part, along with every single player what's put that blue or red shirt on over the years. And everyone can be proud of where it is now.
With that speaking in mind, we're going to have one last little discussion about where Cardiff are today and, you know, just clinching on with the playoff position and everything. I know we briefly talked about it, you know, because of the COVID-19 situation where clubs need to get promoted to the next league or the Premier League, etc. But for you guys, you, Si and Andy, what are your predictions then with Cardiff City? Do you think they'll get to the playoffs and win it? Do you think there'll be a struggle? What are your thoughts and what are your predictions, really?
I think our predictions have changed throughout the season. If you'd have asked us at the start of the season, I think you'd have probably been quite positive, looking for a response after getting relegated. If you'd have asked me when Neil Harris took over before the Charlton game, or after the Charlton game, half time of the Charlton game, by the way, I'd give you a different answer. Listen, if I'm honest, I thought it was a very strange decision naming a manager which was similar. I thought the club were going to go down a different route.
And he'd been sacked from Millwall.
Yeah, and he'd obviously not achieved the things that he wanted to a similar championship club. But now look at the position they're in now. And look at the results he's had recently, that he's done a great job. And you know what I mean? If that's me eating my words, and so be it. That he's done a great job. He's putting them in a position now with 6 games to go. Yes, there was a negative result. But you look at a negative result against Charlton Athletic, who were on a good run, by the way. But two wins out of 2, Leeds United and Preston North End away from home. And I do believe away from home is easier to play without any fans. I'm not sure why, but it looks as though from outside looking in, an ex-player, that all other results, you know what I mean, Middlesbrough going to Stoke and struggling at home to Swansea struggling at home to Luton Town, that I do believe Cardiff are going to get in the playoffs. But I look at the playoffs being really, really difficult. That if Brentford don't get in the playoffs, for me, they're the standout side this season, especially over the last few weeks. If Brentford do go up, that means West Brom or Leeds aren't. So they're then going to be the best side. Then you've got Nottingham Forest, you've got Fulham. It's going to be breathtaking, you know what I mean? So you've got an absolute unbelievable, and that's not without anybody else, Derby jumping through. You know what I mean? If they get in the playoffs, they deserve it, because league tables don't lie, regardless what other managers tell you. But for me, it's going to be a big ask. And my heart says I'd love them to go up, but my head says I'm realistic and think there's too many teams in better form over the season and will probably just get over the line, unfortunately.
What were you then, Si?
So, but it won't be Swansea, though.
No, it will not. Well, I think I'm similar to what Andy says, but slightly different in that I believe that Cardiff have got a very good chance to go and get into the playoffs and win them, simply because the playoffs are about, especially more this season than ever before, are going to be about who's in form, because we've had this massive break which has completely disrupted every team. No one's got that same momentum they had before the break. So I think they probably, I think it's going to be close to whether they get into the playoffs or they don't, because this is just ridiculous in terms of competition. Derby are making a late run for it with, you know, players like Rooney. You've got Blackburn, Preston could make a late run, although they do look like maybe they're probably just out of it. I think Cardiff will get to the playoffs. And I think if Brentford finish in the top 2, then I think Cardiff will certainly be in the playoff final and potentially win it, because hopefully that'll mean Leeds are in the playoffs and they're in the process of bottling it again. But, you know, I don't know. We'll see. It's so competitive. It's ridiculous. The championship, top to bottom, is just anybody can beat anyone. Barnsley went 3-0 on Tuesday,
yeah. It's the best league. You can look down to 14th, 15th in the league, can still get in the playoffs. And mathematically, they can still go down. So, you know what I mean? At the minute, every single team's got something to play for, and every single game, what's getting played, has got something on it. And if that's, like Si said, fighting away from relegation, you know what I mean? That I was quite adamant and set in stone that the bottom three 2 weeks ago were down and out and buried. But all of a sudden now you've got teams who, Charlton Athletic, go to Cardiff, put a really strong performance on, you know what I mean? And defensively performance. And Charlton have been all over the place for weeks. And, you know what I mean? I thought Cardiff would have ripped them up and scored 2, 3, 4 and pushed on. But that wasn't the case. And it just shows how that you can't take anything for granted. And, you know, I mean, Neil Harris can't. And players now go into every game and there's going to be something on it. And the pressure's going to get more and more and more. And it's probably going to get to 44, 45 games, last game of the season. And they're going to have to win to get in the playoffs. And it's whoever's got the biggest kahunas to kick on, you know. So it's going to be a difficult one.
Well, guys, we're going to have to leave it there for now because it's been an absolute honour to have both of you on the show, you know, and to talk about Cardiff City and as well, and bringing back so many memories, you know, Andy, and it's absolutely fantastic. I just want to say a big thank you to Si and a big thank you to Leighton Maxwell as well, both of you guys, because without you, Si, and without Leighton, this wouldn't have happened. So it's absolutely been fantastic. And just Si, if anyone wants to tune in to any of the shows, you want to give the footy fans some information of what to do and where to go come by. So
you can follow the Andy Campbell Show is at A.C.E Footy Show on all social media, and that's the show's social media pages. The show is streamed live on a Monday and a Friday at youtube.com/A.C.E Podcast Nation. Please subscribe. You can also watch it on facebook.com/A.C.E Cast Nation. And what's the other one, Anne? The third one? Periscope and Twitter, which is at AceCast_Nation. And that's 7:30 on a Monday for the Andy Campbell Football Show, where we have a guest. This Monday, we've got Barry Hales. The Friday, then, we have 7 o'clock, 45 minutes of championship talk, previews, reviews. And there's loads of other podcasts out at the same channel. And the audio versions as well, everywhere, like Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, everywhere. Just search A.C.E Podcast Nation and you'll find them all.
All right, then, guys, we'll leave it there for now. And I want to say thank you guys for tuning in to the Dragon's Voice podcast. It's been one hell of a journey so far here, and we're going to keep on going here in this with podcasts. Love for the Welsh football, but it's not just Welsh football. Anyone who's contributed to any Welsh clubs, especially Andy Campbell with that goal, just saying. but anyway, that's the whole point of it, and it's just to get some stories on there, get some good content in. And guys, thank you for tuning in to the Dragon's Voice podcast with Andy Campbell and Si, and I'll see you all very soon. Take care.
Cheers, Reece.
Nice one.